Hello everybody, my name is Christopher Bohorquez. To the few people who listen to my podcast on this channel, Chilling with Sibo, you know that I am a lover of all things pop culture, especially film. Well, since fall is my favorite time of year, with Halloween being one of my favorite holidays, I am going to expand this channel to delve into video editorials, and my first project will be something I call 13 Nights of Halloween. So I came up with a massive list of horror movies or Halloween themed movies or whatever that I've seen and never seen, and will put them in a hat and pick 13 out at random. I will give my own fun personal thoughts on them for 13 nights in a row, which will be from October 19th to October 31st, 2020. These movies will be picked at random, so it will be a lot of fun to see what horror experiences will take up my spooky season. Here's a peek of the list of movies I put into the list. It's over 100 horror movies. A lot of them I have seen, and a lot of them I haven't, so I'm excited to see, what comes up, So yeah, we'll see what happens. Alright guys, here are all my horror movies in a hat. You can already see some names popping out, but I'm going to be choosing at random. So here's my little backdrop. My room is a mess, but it's all good. So anyway, let's get started. I'm going to close my eyes, and I'm going to pick the first one. Alright, let's do this. Alright, so the first one is House, 1986. Never seen it, so this will be for October 19th, 2020.
House. Enter at your own risk.
House released in 1986 and is directed by Steve Miner, who directed one of my favorite Halloween movies, Halloween 4, which is what I consider to be one of the best ones. But yes, House. It is a fun 80s cult horror film that gloriously rips off many haunted house movies like The Shining, Amityville Horror, The Poltergeist, with its main character uncoincidentally resembling popular horror writer Stephen King, who takes on living in a haunted house to get writing done, just like Jack in The Shining. So yeah, this is no coincidence, folks. This is clearly ripping off a lot of things, but it's having fun with it, which is not a bad thing. No. While this movie is definitely on a lower budget, especially compared to its inspirations, this movie definitely gets creative with its limited resources, with some really fun, colorful visual set pieces that never took themselves seriously. The costume and creature designs were pretty creepy and had this charm to them that's missing in modern horror movies. There's one scene in particular that reminded me of the McDonald's Filet-O-Fish commercial. Give me back that Filet-O-Fish. Give me that fish. And there's just some weird, funny scenes, especially with my favorite character in the movie, which is the aunt.
It was the house. It was the house that did it.
Right, Mrs. Hooper, we understand.
Telling you, Roger, it was the house.
Will you shut up? Will you shut up just for once, you old bat?
Touchy.
While yes, this haunted house movie was nothing original, I actually cared about the main character. His aunt is found dead, he's a Vietnam vet who's clearly haunted by his past and the loss of his best friend. He's also divorced and his son is mysteriously missing. While the film is definitely not meant to be taken 100% seriously, with its many laugh-out-loud moments where you question whether it was intentional or not, the main character brings this movie down to earth.
Wouldn't be surprised if someone just got fed up and offed her.
She was my aunt.
Heart of gold, though.
Overall, House gets 7.5 jack-o'-lanterns. It's a fun haunted house flick that doesn't take itself seriously at all, with a surprisingly sympathetic main character. So this is for October 20th, alright. Alright, so this one is Invasion of the Body Snatchers, 1956. Never seen it. Excited. 2 movies I haven't seen. Invasion of the Body Snatchers released in 1956 and is directed by Don Siegel. And I gotta say, I never really knew that 50s horror sci-fi is totally my aesthetic. This is a 60-year-old film that is still effective today. Yeah, a movie from the 50s could be seen as outdated and boring to most people, but something about this film made it so entertaining. The concept of aliens coming from another planet, emerging from these large seeds, replicating human life, and taking over somebody you know, becoming a husk of their former selves, is pretty terrifying. With the limitation of the time period, they were still able to make something that can have modern audiences who appreciate good storytelling on the edge of their seats. It's well acted, has good writing, a nice pace, and the visuals of people emerging from these weird pods is still really creepy. The original Twilight Zone was a couple years away from release, and this movie definitely has that similar feel. It can also be taken as an allegory of the fears America faced during the Cold War. Neither the original author nor the filmmakers intended it that way. But something that can be interpreted in multiple ways demonstrates the power of quality storytelling. Overall, this gets 8 jack-o'-lanterns, with its amazing retro atmosphere and a creepy concept that's open to interpretation to this day.
You're next!
This one is... it's The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. Yeah. Alright. October 21st, 2020.
It's The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown, in color.
It's The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown originally aired in 1966 and is directed by Bill Melendez, and it is based on Charles M. Schulz's Peanuts comic strips. This remains an evergreen classic. I've been watching this animated Peanuts special since I was a kid, and it's one of those things that doesn't age a day. Sure, it's clear that this was made over 50 years ago, but when something is still being watched by people of all ages this many years later, then it must have done something right. The animation's simplicity and charm and the way it brings the iconic comic strip to life makes watching this 20-minute special so effortless. The simple animation is pushed to its absolute limits during scenes of Snoopy's World War I raid and Linus at the pumpkin patch, where it manages to immerse viewers into that environment despite, having simple drawings and all that. This special is able to accurately capture that crispy autumn atmosphere during its peak. It makes you nostalgic for your trick-or-treating days with some clever commentary on the holiday itself. Vince Guaraldi's music during these Peanut specials is very moody, with each character's situation having its own catchy theme. It's insane that I'm in my mid-20s and will still get something out of watching this, and will still feel a lot of joy watching this with my future kids down the line. Overall, this gets a 10 out of 10 jack-o'-lanterns because this is one of the best celebrations of Halloween ever that's fun for all ages.
Boy, I got 3 cookies. Hey, I got a package of gum. I got a rock.
Alright, what did I choose? Alright. Bone Tomahawk. Cool, never seen it. Bone Tomahawk was released in 2015 and was directed by S. Craig Zahler. Westerns and horror are 2 genres that don't traditionally mix, and honestly, they should more often. One of my favorite examples of that is the DLC for Red Dead Redemption titled Undead Nightmare, which was an amazing mix of horror and western. Bone Tomahawk almost fills that hole of the lack of a second Undead Nightmare. At first, this movie seemed like a traditional western. A sheriff and a couple people go on a journey to rescue people who were kidnapped by a savage tribe. But when a Native American comes in and tells them that this tribe may resemble the natives, in reality, this tribe is called the Troglodytes, and they are inbred, cannibalistic savages who aren't really human anymore. The Troglodytes are some of the most vicious, horrifying antagonists in a horror movie. The way they move, the unsettling sound that comes from the whistles, and the way they chop up people was extremely disturbing. A specific scene in the cave where the Troglodytes kill someone in quite possibly the most abhorrent way possible had my jaw on the floor, and honestly I loved every moment of it. Great performances from Kurt Russell, Matthew Fox, Lily Simmons, Patrick Wilson. This unique blend of horror and western definitely works, and I would love to see it done again. Please. Overall, this gets an 8.5 jack-o'-lanterns because Rockstar just doesn't want to make single-player DLC anymore, so this will absolutely do. So I beg Hollywood to make more horror western films.
Oh, you're the most intelligent man here. Is that a fact?
It is. Sheriff Hunt has a wife. So does Mr. O'Dwyer. And you're a widower.
Yeah. What has that got to do with anything?
Smart men don't get married.
And this one is Resident Evil. Alright.
Resident Evil. You're all going to die down here.
Resident Evil released in 2002 and it is directed by Paul W.S. Anderson. Resident Evil is an air quotes adaptation of the very popular horror game franchise. I say air quotes because while it definitely takes its inspirations and foundations from the game, it is entirely its own thing, with many fans pretty much disowning these films. I love these games, and honestly, I love these movies as well. They are absolute guilty pleasures of mine. While some are definitely better than others, this one along with some of the others in the series, like 2 and 4, are pure unadulterated schlock entertainment. The first one is the one that tries the most to feel like the games, which isn't saying much because it does try to be the most grounded compared to its convoluted sequels. No character from the games appear in this. The only thing from the games that are in this movie to make sure you know that it's a Resident Evil adaptation is Umbrella Corporation, the T-Virus, zombies, and the Lickers. But despite it being a loose adaptation of a beloved game franchise, this movie is just a ton of fun for me. I've seen it like 20 times since its release and I was surprised I still enjoy it. It's a straightforward sci-fi action zombie flick. Since this is from the early 2000s, it of course has its obvious Matrix inspirations in visual design and music. But honestly, I dig it, especially this scene.
Ah, fuck yeah.
Besides the terrible CGI Licker, the movie visually holds up for the most part since most of it is practical. The zombies are fresh, vicious, and cause some serious damage. The makeup surprisingly holds up as well, with how they are effectively able to make someone look like absolute death. The dogs look really good too, and their designs are absolutely terrifying. And a side note, it's a shame that Michelle Rodriguez dies in the first movie, as I think she could have been a great co-lead next to Mila Jovovich. But hey, at least she has Fast and the Furious. Overall, this gets 7.5 jack-o'-lanterns. This is a nostalgic guilty pleasure for me. Even some of the biggest haters of this film franchise can admit this first movie can be decent since it's inherently a harmless zombie flick that just so happens to use the Resident Evil name. Oh man, this is something. Oh, okay, let's see. So I messed up on cutting some of these names, but alright, so this is gonna be the original Mummy from 19 Yeah, the original Mummy from like the 1930s, yes. The Mummy released in 1932 and it is the oldest movie for 13 Nights of Halloween this year. It is directed by Carl Freund, who is known for doing the cinematography for stuff like Dracula, Metropolis, and I Love Lucy, so it's safe to say this guy is a pretty important piece in Hollywood history. So when I think of the names Imhotep, Ankh-Senamun, Artist Bay, my mind immediately thinks of the Brendan Fraser Mummy movies that I grew up watching, not realizing that its origins came from a film from 1932. Universal Studios truly had an amazing run of horror movies during this time that have become some of the most influential pieces of media of all time. Frankenstein, The Wolfman, Dracula, The Invisible Man, and yes, The Mummy are all from Universal. The mummy monster as we know it, that's in the pop culture consciousness, comes from this film. While this film may not be the best representation of ancient Egypt and the lore around mummies with some really outdated views, there is so much iconic imagery in this film that has influenced countless things. Also, there is blackface in this film, and they call the character the Nubian when the actor who plays him is white, which is just laughably racist. But despite all the things that have not aged well from 1932, which is understandable because it's almost 90 years ago, The Mummy is honestly a well-made horror flick with quality costumes, makeup, and production design. Boris Karloff as Imhotep, a reincarnated mummy bent on domination, elevates this movie with his performance. Fun fact, Boris does the voice of the Grinch in the original animated special, and it was fun hearing the Grinch chant these ancient spells. He's so creepy and intimidating, and there's multiple shots of him staring directly at the audience, making our skins crawl. What surprised me most about this film is how it questions the morality of man messing with ancient artifacts and taking them away from their origin country. I love going to the museum, but one has to question if it was right for countries to just dig these beautiful historical artifacts up and take them away from their home territories. The result of messing with the scroll caused the resurrection of Emotep and the mayhem that ensued. Overall, this gets 8 jack-o'-lanterns. I enjoyed watching The Mummy, and it's a must-watch for classic horror fans. A lot of the concepts that came from the Brendan Fraser movies originate in this film, and it was a lot of fun seeing that.
And yet I shall awaken memories of love and crime and death.
Alright, let's see what's next. Alright, I Know What You Did Last Summer. Awesome.
I know what you did last summer.
I Know What You Did Last Summer, released in 1997, and is directed by Jim Gillespie, with the writer of Scream actually, who gives it that similar feel from Scream, but it's not as self-aware because it takes itself more seriously than that. Teen movies in the 90s were all the rage, so of course you gotta make a horror movie with teens in it to get fans of both genres. I Know What You Did Last Summer is an unapologetically 90s teen slasher that doesn't try to reinvent the genre wheel like Scream did a year before this, but it definitely is a fun, entertaining watch that questions the morality of its main characters. This film is about some dirtbag, good-looking Peakton high schoolers who ran over someone and they try to dump the body and try to forget that they did it. And lo and behold, the same guy they ran over is back and is terrorizing the 4 teens. And it all starts when Jennifer Love Hewitt receives the note, "I know what you did last summer." One of my biggest takeaways watching this movie again is the fact that these characters kind of got what they deserved, and they're not people I really feel sympathy for. The only decent one of the group who deserves some benefit of the doubt is Jennifer Love Hewitt's character, because she was just in the passenger seat. That's it. While the blonde white neo-Nazi was acting like an asshole, threatening everybody, including strangling Jennifer Love Hewitt, and he participated in dumping the body, so he definitely deserved what he got. Freddie Prinze Jr. was the one driving the car, and he shouldn't have been speeding and gotten so easily distracted. Stupid idiot. And Sarah Michelle Gellar helped dump the body. So yeah, these are all scumbags, except for Love Hewitt, who, you know, she was a victim in that moment because she was threatened by the neo-Nazi. So yeah, she was in an uncomfortable position. And the best part about all this is that the man was still alive when he got dumped. And so if Freddie Prinze Jr. just called 911 and he admitted to the cops that he was the one driving and he was sober as well, none of this would have happened. But, you know, stupid 90s teen slasher, what are you gonna do? But, you know, despite all this, I Know What You Did Last Summer, it's just a straightforward, fun slasher with some beautiful looking 90s teens. Overall, this gets 7.5 jack-o'-lanterns. Despite my rant, I do think this is a lot of fun, and it's a nice 90s time capsule of a bygone generation of teen heartthrobs. I was just kind of cheering for the killer this time, and yeah, that makes me a little bit sick.
What are you waiting for, huh? What are you waiting for?
And The Fly, 1986. Awesome. Haven't seen it yet.
Help me. Please, help me.
The Fly released in 1986 and is directed by David Cronenberg and stars the obviously amazing Jeff Goldblum and the nice Gina Davis. The Fly is the king of body horror. This is probably one of the most disgusting body horror transformation ever put on film. No, in fact, it is probably the most disgusting thing I've ever seen, and it is fucking glorious. There's a reason why Rick and Morty refers to those deformed monstrosities as Cronenberg monsters, because David Cronenberg built the modern blueprint on disgusting and horrifying body transformations and disfigurations. Seeing a handsome 80s Jeff Goldblum with flowing brunette hair slowly transform into a human fly is by far some of the most sickest, vile imagery I've seen on screen, and I loved every moment of it. I cringed and had a face of disgust most of the time when he was slowly transforming into a fucking weird human hybrid fly, and I want to applaud everyone involved with this film, especially Cronenberg and the costume and makeup designers. This might be the best costume and makeup I've ever seen in this genre. I don't know how they pulled it off, but they are cinematic magicians, and it's a shame that movies nowadays just aren't going for it as much as they used to anymore in this department. The Fly gets a 10 out of 10 jack-o'-lanterns. It demonstrates why costume and makeup is so important, and it can make and break a film like this. And this Nightmare on Elm Street, awesome. One of my favorites.
From Wes Craven, director of The Hills Have Eyes and Last House on the Left, a new masterpiece in fantasy terror, Nightmare on Elm Street.
A Nightmare on Elm Street, released in 1984, and is directed by the horror legend Wes Craven. The concept of a horror movie where victims can get killed in their dreams is something only the horror mastermind Wes Craven can come up with. In terms of my favorite slashers ever for me, Nightmare on Elm Street is neck and neck with the original Halloween and Scream, another Craven movie. Freddy is probably the best horror villain ever. He is full of so much personality while being a genuine threat. His design is so colorful, fun, and creepy with his burnt face, ridiculous hat, and Christmas sweater. What the fuck were they coming up with? But my god, it works. He's also pretty damn hilarious, even when the original movie is definitely more on the serious side compared to some of the later sequels. Some of the best horror kills ever are in this movie that include the floating sequence and Johnny Depp turning into a splashing pile of blood. The dream imagery is so fucking bloody creative, and it demonstrates how much of a visual master Wes Craven was at scaring people. Yes, nothing more need be said because this absolutely deserves a 10 out of 10 jack-o'-lanterns. The original Elm Street is scary, inventive, and overall one of my favorite horror movies ever. I would love to see Freddy come back in some capacity someday if they ever get the rights figured out. Also, rest in peace, Wes Craven. You are truly missed. An American Werewolf in London. Alright, cool.
An American Werewolf in London. Something different.
An American Werewolf in London, released in 1981 and is directed by John Landis. And I gotta say, this movie is pretty awesome. From start to finish, it's a solid horror film with moments of dark comedy and incredible costume and makeup by Rick Baker, who won the Academy Award for this movie. This is a classic werewolf tale with a dark modern twist that kept me on the edge of my seat. Lighting, camera angles, and good costume and makeup will always go the distance. This film also has this strange erotic energy to it where the main character becoming a werewolf is kind of a metaphor for a sexual awakening. And movies just aren't as horny anymore, I gotta say. And the makeup for the dead friend who haunts the protagonist is truly extraordinary, how it goes from these disgusting wet, fresh wounds to an undead, rotting corpse. Fun fact, Rick Baker, who did the makeup for this movie and won the Academy Award, did the makeup for the Thriller music video, and the director of this film, John Landis, directed that music video as well. And when you watch Thriller, it makes sense, and it kind of resembles American Werewolf in London. The climax of this film is one of the most chaotic climaxes in horror films I've ever seen, and it reminded me of Landis' other film, Blues Brothers, with that epic, massive car pileup. It was like that, but in a horror movie, which is just wow. An American Werewolf in London gets 10 out of 10 jack-o'-lanterns, and it is probably the definitive modern werewolf film that I couldn't recommend enough. What has my life come to? I'm actually going to be watching this movie. Wow. The Human Centipede was first released in 2009 and is directed by Tom Six. Back in the early 10s, when I was still in high school and when Netflix streaming was in its infancy, there was this creepy poster of a film called The Human Centipede. I looked up what it was about and I thought I would never watch something like that. I remember it being one of the first cult phenomenons on Netflix streaming that people around my age would talk about. Like, yo, did you see this movie? Yo, did you see The Human Centipede? Yo. And, you know, and my biggest thing with this movie was the South Park episode spoofing this movie, which is actually pretty hilarious. But now, after picking this movie out of the hat, I finally saw this movie. Is this a great, well-made horror film that's going to be known as a classic? No. But it's an original horror film with an absolutely gross but original concept that can be hard to swallow. And it effectively accomplished what it set out to do, which is to shock and disturb. I actually admire Tom Six for sticking to his guns and going for it. Everybody involved in this movie, while maybe not the most talented, were all committed to their craft, and how can I not applaud that? The highlight of the movie is most definitely in the makeup that looks disturbingly convincing, that makes it seem like an actual human centipede is possible, which scientists have laughably disproven, but the magic of filmmaking is trying to convince the viewer the impossible is possible, and they did that in spades because I cringed and winced, but I made it through the 88-minute runtime. So yeah, The Human Centipede gets 7 jack-o'-lanterns because this movie is definitely not for everybody. But if there's someone who wants to see an original horror concept taken to its absolute limits without, then, just give this movie a shot and see how you feel about it.
Oh, yeah!
Okay, I bent this one, so what is this? Oh, okay, nice. Hold on. Fuck. Okay, so this is Trick or Treat. Yeah, Trick or Treat. Cool, never seen it. Trick or Treat is directed by Michael Dougherty, known for directing Krampus and Godzilla King of the Monsters, and it first was seen in 2007 at some horror festivals. But then it got released straight to video in 2009, and I remember this was on Netflix streaming back in the early 2010s as well, making its rotations, and people seeing it and telling me, oh, you gotta see this movie. But I never saw it till now for 13 Nights of Halloween, and honestly I'm just smacking myself in the face because Trick or Treat, in my opinion, was robbed of a theatrical release, and I think it could have made some waves if it did. But I gotta say, Trick or Treat is an epic celebration of the spookiest time of year. I feel like an idiot for not watching this until now. Director Michael Dougherty and everyone else involved truly captured the Halloween atmosphere, making me feel immersed the whole time. I'm a sucker for anthologies, and each story brought something terrifying to the table with characters and plot lines that cross paths. This film could be creepy yet tongue-in-cheek and is having so much fun with itself. Sam the Pumpkin Kid, or the Burlap Kid, yeah, he's an absolute cult horror icon. His design is pretty simple, but looks so much like a monster that will only come out during the 31st day of October. While serious horror fans are most definitely aware of Trick or Treat, this is still a relatively obscure film that needs to be seen by the biggest audience possible. And hopefully that sequel gets made sooner rather than later. This is a movie that I would just recommend people watch instead of talking about it on and on a video editorial. So yes, Trick or Treat absolutely earns that 10 out of 10 jack-o'-lanterns. It really captures that fun, spooky atmosphere of suburbia during this specific holiday, and it just makes me want to be part of the shenanigans that is going on. So yeah, go watch it. Alright, so this is The Wicker Man, 1973. The Wicker Man released in 1973 and is directed by Robin Hardy. The original Wicker Man from 1973 is one of the most important films in British cinema and has influenced countless other horror films after it. This is my first time seeing The Wicker Man, and my only exposure to it was people talking about the memeability of the mid-2000s remake with Nicolas Cage. Ah, not the bees! Not the bees! This 70s folk horror film, from beginning to end, is trippy as fuck, and it seems like this seems more like an acid-fueled Burning Man experience than a traditional horror film, and I really dug it because of that. A majority of this film takes place in the daytime, which is quite refreshing for this genre. Everything may be on the bright sunny island, but the colorfulness actually adds to how unsettling this film can be. Imagine going on this vacation and having, well, to be fair, it's not a vacation. A police officer is investigating a missing child, and imagine going on this island and having this unsettling feeling the whole time you're there because there's just something that is so off about the town population. That's just like, that's kind of like every person's like worst nightmare when they go like camping or they go to like, they rent a house somewhere in some community, you know. Those masks, the weird chanting, the dancing, the iconic burning stick man, and of course the naked lady dance were sequences I questioned what the fuck I was watching, and I love that there's still things that can surprise me with this genre. This type of film can only be made in the 1970s, and I wish modern films brought back some of this insanity. It was also cool to see a young Christopher Lee, rest in peace, who plays the leader of this island, and he was charming yet just so freaking weird. Overall, The Wicker Man gets 9 jack-o'-lanterns. It's a 70s horror film that goes all out with its weirdness that any self-respecting horror fan needs to watch if they want to experience something unique. So yeah, those are all 13 films I watched for my 13 nights of Halloween. Each brought something new and unique to the table. Whether they were a masterpiece or not, I still enjoyed watching each of them, and I can't wait for 13 Nights of Halloween 2021. Thank you so much for tuning in, whoever did and however small the audience is. Thank you so much. I love this time of year, and I can't wait for this time of year next year already. Thank you so much again, and hopefully you guys tune in next time I put out something.
You never see it coming. You'll be dinner and pass around. God,